Hello there. So I'm just shutting down the music and we'll get started. So just give me a few seconds to just finish a few touches on my setup and we should be fine. So hello everybody and welcome on this new ScourgeBringer development stream. So today we'll go through the latest progress we made this past week, and we're going to check some stuff with the enemies and what we are going to do with bosses and where we are from now. So as usual, feel free to ask questions in the Twitch chat. I'll be glad to answer any question. And yeah, of course. So let's start. So the first thing I wanted to show you was the progress that we made on the prototype. So the main thing that we added since last time is a new kind of enemy. It's a blue enemy. It's a little robot that is mounted on walls. And it can only follow the wall that he is attached on. It's not like the slugs that will go through all walls, but these ones are just attached to one walls and they are trying to follow the player, and they will shoot on sight. And this was to test the reuse of different behavior. Like I said in the previous newsletter, I am trying to have separate behaviors from moving behaviors and attack behaviors. I'm trying to implement multiple of them, and I can combine them how I want them to. So this new enemy, it basically reuse the movement scheme from the slug, but there is more parameters that limit them to one wall, and they won't follow anyone else, and they have a new attack pattern, which is attack on sight. So they are waiting for the player to be on the line of sight, and if the player is in this line, they fire on it. Well, it's pretty simple, pretty basic, but it's starting to have more and more behavior into the game, and the more behavior we have, the more complex enemies we can start making. But that was just a very basic test with some line of sight coding and so on. So now that all this stuff is in the game, we will be able to move forward more quickly with new enemies. So I'm just going to try to clean this room without getting hit. Okay, pretty straightforward. Yeah, another cool thing about the stream is that I have figured out why my frame rate was not that good, and OBS basically made my frame rate to be just running like half the real frame rate. So hopefully now this is all sorted and you can just see the game running perfectly smoothly, hopefully. And that's it for what was new in the current prototype. And over the past few days, my main focus was on bosses. We started to work on bosses. We really want to do something different, very different than what we did on Neurovoider, because we didn't quite like it, what we did on Neurovoider. I don't know. I know I can show you right now, but on Neurovoider, I'm just going to try to show you an example boss from... Oh, great! My super editor just crashed, but it's not a problem. I'm just going to restart it. So, yeah, about bosses. On Neurovoider, we made the choice to have procedurally generated bosses, and that was kind of a mistake, maybe, I don't know, but it made the boss way less memorable than any bosses in other games, and we thought that would be a good idea to have really an infinite possibilities of bosses, but it didn't end up that way, because if you play Neurovoider, you will notice that every bosses basically have the same kind of design and pattern. So they're basically mostly all of the same, and they were then ended up being very difficult to balance. And I think that you can feel this by playing in the game. The boss just don't really feel right, and we are very aware of this. For the bosses of ScourgeBringer, we really want to do this right and just make the bosses the baseline of the gameplay. Sorry. And so what we are going to do, we are going to handcraft every bosses of the game, and we want them to have some very cool animations and patterns, attack patterns, and really want them to be predictable so you can learn boss fights. And we also want them, of course, to be memorable, to be very unique, and for you to just really remember each bosses. So this is a preview of the first boss we are working on. It's going to be a stone golem that is going to throw waves of bullets, throw punches, and just move around the arena and so on. And the other enemies in the game are animated pixel by pixel. I'm just going to show you what it's done. So this is a sprite. A sprite it's a pixel art. It's like a Photoshop, but for pixel art and animating pixel art. So it's very dedicated to games and pixel art games specifically. It's a very, very cool tool. If you're doing pixel art, you'll most likely want to use sprites. It's very cool. You can have a lot of cool things with color palettes. You can import some very great palettes. There are a lot of developers that are sharing their own color palette. So it's very cool. And so this is the new enemy that I've talked to you about, and you can animate them in a sprite. You have a timeline with keyframes, and you animate frame by frame your sprite. And you can just preview live the different animation. And what's cool about a sprite, and like any other cool animation tool, is that you have a feature that is called onion skins. And onion skin is basically a possibility to visualize the previous and maybe also the next frame with some ghosting, so that you can have a better feel at what you are doing and how you are going to blend the different frames. So this is a tool that Florian is using on a daily basis. On Neurovoider, he was using mostly Photoshop for pixel art, but he then learned and discovered and learned to use a sprite, and now is almost always using a sprite. He's not using Photoshop anymore, and he's pretty satisfied with this. I can show you a few other things. So this is the sprite sheet of the main character, the playable character, and the few enemies are there too, also with bullets and some animation like explosions. And right now it's quite a messy sprite sheet, but we are going to reorganize everything and so on. But for now, the fact that everything is in this sprite sheet is very handy, and we're fine with this. But at some point, we are going to reorganize everything, and we have also different sprite sheet and tile sets for everything that is background, levels, and other enemies. And we have one dedicated to boss. So this is just a sprite sheet with all the research of what Florian is doing. So these are bosses. It's current bosses that we are working on. Most of them are not finished at all. And we are trying to focus for now on this boss, because this one is mostly finished in terms of sprites. So what I am going to do is to take each of its parts, and I want to have animations that are different than that can be done in Sprite. In Sprite, you can only do animation frame by frame, but for boss, we want to do something more complex than just frame by frame. We want to do something that is called bone-based animation, and for that I can show you another tool that we are not using, but which is a good example of what we are trying to achieve. It's called Spine. Spine is a tool that is dedicated to making 2D animation out of multiple sprites and bones. You are going to design a skeleton to your sprites and attach different sprites to different bones. And once you've done to what we call to be rigging, you rig the different bones to the sprite and so on. Once you have done that, you can just move around easily sprites by just grabbing the different bones, and everything is going to come together. So here this arm is composed of different bones and different sprites. And if you go to each articulation, you're going to each joint, you're going to be able to just move around, animate your character by simply grabbing the bones and working with translations and rotation and scaling and so on. So once you have configured your skeleton, you switch to another view, which is the animation view. And here you have another thing. It's an animation timeline. So this is something very basic if you already toyed with an animation software. Mostly all of them have something very similar to this, and it's very straightforward to use. If you go to an animation, so this is an animation, I believe it's the run animation. Okay, it's the running animation, and you see that when I press the play button, the timeline is automatically played. And I have my character that is running. So how does all of this work? You just define what are the different steps of your animation. You are going to break down the movement into several frames. For instance, you can manipulate each of the bones separately. So here I am focused on the front upper arm. It is here. It is this bone here. And each of the green bar are going to be what we call keyframes. It's some reference frames that you are going to set and tell, I want that on the, I don't know, 4th frame, I want that my arm have a rotation of a certain value, of a given value. And I can tweak this value, which will mean that when the animation reaches this frame, it is going to try to interpolate, to do an easing between the two positions of two different keyframes, and it's going to ease the movement. And once you have set all your keyframe of your animation for all your bones and everything that you want to do, you can do some very complex animation, some very cool animation that won't require at all to animate pixels frame by frame. And that's what we call bone-based animation. That's how basically 3D animation work, and you can apply this to 2D. And that's why we are going to try to do with the bosses of NeuroVoider, but we are not going to use an existing software because I have spent a lot of hours, if not days, trying to figure out what would be the best software to do what we want to do with the bosses of NeuroVoider. And I ended up with the conclusion that I would be way more efficient by redoing this kind of tool within our own engine and our own editor to make this. I would be more efficient, and it would be less time consuming. So that may sound a little bit crazy, because I know that a lot of people will say, but stuff like spine just work perfectly. But I would agree. But for what we want to do and for what we want to optimize behind, and how we want to plug it with our engine and other tools and maybe other game and program and so on, we don't feel like relying on software like Spine would do the trick, would do what we really want. It's hard to explain, but we really want to do something closer, way more closer to our own need. We want to be able to manipulate stuff within our own engine and to have preview of how our enemies are going to behave. I want to be able to design bosses directly in our engine and to click just one button and to be able to play, to just test out what pattern I'm going to attack pattern I'm going to design right now. And I want also to be able in this animation tool to be able to plug events like which sound is going to play at each frame, and which weapon the boss is going to use, and which bullet is going to fire in each stuff. And I want also to have some very complex event-based system, which I cannot really or easily plug with an external tool and have live preview, live reload, and so on. And I started to toy around with this today, and I didn't thought that would be possible to do an animation timeline such easily, but I've been able to redesign what would be our animation timeline. I have just created one component that is going to be the cornerstone of our animation system. So here I have all of our bones and different sprites, and we are just going to need some translation and rotation. We are not going to do scaling and so on, because that's not going to be useful to us. And on this tool, I'm also going to add the possibility to tweak weapons, to animate weapons, to trigger some events, firing events, sound events, maybe external events, and so on. And right now, just today, I have programmed this interactive timeline, and you can put keyframes, but it doesn't work right now. And this is going to help me just how to design animations. You are going to set up your keyframe here and just choose also your easing method. And you will only have to grab a part of the boss, drag it around or rotate it around to do your animation, and you will be able to animate something, I believe, very quickly. So I'm catching up with a few questions. But stuff like spine works perfect. Yeah, stuff like spine works perfect. Are you going to do the animation, or is Florian doing the animation? I believe that Florian is going to do the animation, because if I try to animate stuff and do anything that is a bit artistic, I feel like I won't do anything relevant. And yeah, I believe that Florian is going to make the animation, and I am going to code everything that is the attack patterns, how the boss is going to move on the screen, and how he's going to attack, and with which weapon, and so on. So we are going to use our bullet editor, bullet pattern editor. This is what is going to define what are going to be the different weapons and so on. So for instance, if I want the boss to go in a corner and prepare his hand to fire something, and he's going to move his hand around and fire bullets like so, and I can just trigger events in this animation system to just tell that when the end reach the end of the movement, I can just tell my animation system that is going to trigger a weapon that is based on an emitter of bullets that I have defined in my editor, like I don't know, maybe the first one, this one. And it's going to write, when I trigger the event, to fire 3 bullets in a row. And it's what's going to be how we want to design stuff. So the boss is going to be able to use all kinds of weapons, of bullet patterns, and also do attacks that are not based on bullets, but just going to have some hitbox, maybe throw the hands at the player. And well, we're going to try to do things like this. Well, and what can I show you to finish a little bit what I wanted to explain to you today? Yeah, I can show you how we work because we also simplified the way that we sync our different tools. I'm going to show you, if I can, the editor, one of the editor of NeuroRider, to show you the difference and what is the new philosophy of the different tools that we have now. So in NeuroRider we had 3 different tools. We had a tile editor, which is used to design the different bigger tile. Sorry, I'm just going to try to select a more visible tile set so you can just have a better view. Okay, this one is better. So in NeuroRider we had we were designing so bigger tiles, big chunk of maps, and we were plugging them together. It's a bit like what we are doing in ScourgeBringer. In ScourgeBringer we have a room-based architecture, and we are just basically plugging rooms together. In NeuroRider, it was the same algorithm, but it was a more open-ended gameplay. So instead of plugging rooms, we were plugging open-ended chunk of map. And this tool was designed to make this tile-based stuff with also dynamic lightning. I can just grab lights and move them around, and I have a live preview that is in engine to tweak the different lights. So that was something a bit complex, but we were quite satisfied with the result. And so that's one of the editor, but it's not the editor that I wanted to show you. The one that is really relevant regarding the complexity that we had in NeuroRider, but that we don't want in our next game. So this was the animation explosion particle / weapon animation tool. We had a very complex tool with our one big sprite sheet, and we were defining what are the sequences of sprites that are going to form an animation. And once we have an animation, we were able to make them more complex animation, like animations that were spawning other animation. That was useful to make some explosion, for instance, like an explosion that explode and just spawn a lot of smoke and a lot of other kind of sprites, and also particles and so on. And here you were also to choose the different sound. So we have a full list of sound that we had in the game, and we were just telling which sound were going to be played for each animation, for each effect, if there was some random stuff. So this was a utterly complex tool. I believe that by just looking at it right now, you're going to have a headache. And I'm not quite sure to know what everything is by looking at it again. The thing is that most of everything that you see here, all the animations that we defined them one time and we never touch them anymore. And the problem is that it's pretty pointless to design a super cool editor if you only have to design things once. And that's why for ScourgeBringer, our editor is going to be pretty simple. You are not going to see anything like this, like designing different kind of animation, selecting what are the different sequences, how everything is cut on a sprite sheet, and so on. So what we do now basically is that everything that has to be defined only one time, we are defining them in what is now a text-based file. So for instance, this is our particle catalog, and we have each particle that are defined. So this one is a dash particle, and we have the frame time of the animation, the duration of each frame, which texture it's used, its rotation center, and the different frames that will compose its animation. And for the enemy, it's the same thing. In Neurovoider, we had a very complex editor also to design the different enemies. And if you remember, in Neurovoider, each enemy is composed of multiple sprites, and we were procedurally generated the enemy. Like we took a body, we took legs, and we took a head and weapon, and we were just plugging everything together. But we had to manually design some of the stuff because not all sprites can align perfectly with every sprite. So we had a special alignment tool for that. And now for ScourgeBringer, we are going to define everything in a text file. So for instance, I'm going to take a look at the latest enemy that we added, this one, the cannon crab. And so it's pretty straightforward. We have a text-based stuff with it's going to have 3 HP. It's going to have a move behavior of staying on wall and an attack behavior on firing on sight. And it also follows the player. It has a movement speed. It has a firing speed factor. That means that when it's going to fire, it's going to stop moving. And it has different kind of animation. It has an animation of walking. It has an animation of charging its fire. It has an animation of firing, of stopping fire, and being idle on the wall. And that's pretty straightforward. There's no need for an editor to design all of this. You only have to tweak some values. Once you have all the animations that are set up, you can tweak the AI very easily by just opening a text-based file and tweaking a value. It's not launching an editor, looking for the good slider and tweaking stuff. It's really trying to over-engineer things. In Neurovoider, we really over-engineered most of the aspect of the game. And for ScourgeBringer, we want to do as less over-engineering as possible. So for instance, for the here's this boss preview. It's actually 4 different sprites, and I have a boss catalog, which is this one. It's the boss that we have, and we have different parts. So I have a body, I have a head, I have a left arm, and I have a right arm. So each of these parts have a rotation center, a position relative to its parent, and a source rectangle, which is basically where the engine have to look for the sprite within its sprite sheet. And for instance, this is the sprite sheet of the first boss. So as you see, everything is not attached like it is in here in the editor. And so what our text-based file is just telling us where in the sprite sheet is each part and how they are placed relatively to each other. And then this is used for the editor to just know what is the default frame, and every animation are going to be based on this default frame. So it's only going to be some rotation and translation of each sprite within this frame that are going to define all the animation. So it's a pretty simple way of doing stuff, but it's going to be everything that we need, and I believe it's going to work quite okay. So just trying to answer your question. That's why a few third-party old code. Yeah, it's complex. Yeah, all the editor within NeuroVoider was quite complex. So Akam asking, I guess it's going to be a pain to rewrite this JSON file once you reorganize the sprite sheet, right? Yeah, if we reorganize the sprite sheet, we are going to have to reorganize our JSON file. But it would be quite the same if we had just within this tool, if we move around the sprite, we also had to change stuff. So it's basically the same problem. It just that we have a fancy interface instead of having a text file. But the process is the same, and I believe that the time changing everything is the same. Because you also have to tweak the animation. If I wanted to change one animation or added frame and so on, I would have to go through this list of animation, find the good animation, note the good value, change the values, reorganize stuff, and so on. So, but refactoring sprite sheet is not something that happens quite often over the production of a game. Once we are set with the architecture of our different files, it's going to be pretty straightforward to move forward. Our files are already quite organized. We have one folder with the different background of the different room. We have a folder for the sprite sheet for bosses, one sprite sheet per boss. We have a sprite sheet for door animation, which is maybe going to be ditched at some point, because we can just put door animations within the room sprite sheet. And we have for now a common texture, which is used for everything that is a movable entity right now, but we are going to cut it down and just extract the different enemies and refactor them into their own texture and folder. The player is going to have its own texture and everything that is UI, because here we have a few stuff relative to UIs. It's also going to have their own texture, but it's really no big deal to refactor a texture. Okay, it can be a bit tedious when you think about it, but really refactoring a chunk of textures, it's a matter of a few minutes of tweaking a text file, and then you can just move on. And it's really something that you don't do every day. So it's really no big deal to not have something very, very fancy to design this. And I think that we're good. We are good with everything that I wanted to show you for now. So these are just a few previews. I believe that this is going to be the next boss after the stone golem that we are going to design, because we really like the design of this boss, and we have some good idea of what we can do out of it in terms of attack pattern and so on. And well, that's it. So thanks for dropping by. I hope that you've enjoyed this new tour of what we made so far on ScourgeBringer. And as always, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask. And you can ask them here on the Twitch chat, on the comment on YouTube if you are watching a replay, or on Twitter, or on our Discord channel. And you can just basically drop anywhere, ask any question, and we are pretty open about discussing about stuff and just showing everything. And so for the remaining of the week, I am going to continue what I've started here with the animation timeline. I'd like to finish this by next week, and so we can start to do bosses and hopefully have a boss in our coming demo. That would be very, very cool, and we are going to try to work this out. So thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye.